6 minutes to with the MP Landsman, please.
Thank you, and thanks for joining us at committee today. Throughout all of your statements, you have said things like, the university is no place for hate. There's a zero tolerance. It's unacceptable. It has absolutely become a place for hate. And you can see that in the testimony from students, from faculty, and from anybody who has dealt with the administration. It has absolutely become a tolerant place for that hate, and has absolutely become acceptable on campuses and in the front courtyards. Now, I'll start with President Gertler. It's nice to see you in this environment. Have you gone to the encampment?
I have. And it's right outside my window, so I see it frequently.
Yes, and so have you verified that all of the people there protesting, and I have a reason for this question, that all of the people there are protesting are part of the university community, are either students, are faculty, are part of the administration?
We know that many of our students are there. We know that they are visited by faculty, but we also believe that there are people from outside the university community who are present in the encampment at various different times.
So the reason I bring this up is because U of T is about over 60,000 students. There's, let's say, 300 people at those encampments. Do you feel that the university is now negotiating with less than 0.5% of potential students, or not even students, who are frankly holding the university hostage on its decisions on how it goes about its businesses? What do you say to those watching, in their faculty, alumni, parents who are deciding where their kids might want to go to school? What do you say to those people who see 300 people holding the university to account for a student body of 60,000?
Actually, our student body is closer to 97,000.
Oh.
So yes, it's grown a little bit since your time on our campus. I should say through the chair that we have been meeting with student representatives in our discussions about how to end the encampment peacefully. And they claim to represent all of the interests within the encampment. At this point, we must take that statement at face value. I can assure you, though, and I have gone public as recently as late last week with a set of proposals that the university has been putting across the table to the students, where we have not compromised on the issues that are clearly of importance to us. We have a very clearly articulated policy for considering divestment proposals, which we have used in the past, and we are saying to the protest group, the policy is there. It lays out the steps, and you're free to use it. And we hope that they will, because that is the only way that we can actually address this.
I think the point is that you are actually even engaging in a negotiation with the 300 people who have, illegally set up camp on the front lawn. But I'll go to, do you believe that the university is adequately enforcing its code of conduct? Because I'll show you what's at the front of the encampment. That's a symbol that glorifies terrorism by Hamas, and I think you've probably seen this in the past. You've probably seen it in various places around campus, but that sits at the front of the encampment. Now, don't you think that the university's code of conduct would suggest that something like that is against the code of conduct?
Well, Madam Chair, in responding to the member's question, first of all, we have asked the student organizers of the encampment to remove signage and language which is offensive, and they have complied on occasion, not in every instance. In other instances, we have reported hateful acts and hateful speech to Toronto Police Services, and you heard from the Deputy Chief in the previous hour. Something like 38 incidents have been reported as of the end of last week, half a dozen of which we believe may qualify as hate speech or hateful acts. And we are working closely with TPS to help them indeed investigate these incidents. And as you heard from the police chief or deputy chief, they are indeed taking these allegations very seriously.
President Gertler, has there been any students that were suspended or expelled for any of these actions?
We have indeed had violations of our code of conduct, which have resulted in suspension and, on occasion, expulsion. And indeed, those have been related to, some of these have been related to recent actions and the protests around the conflict in the Middle East. So the answer is yes.
So is it related to the encampment specifically? When were these people suspended or expelled?
So the encampment has been in place for 3.5 weeks. And so we have not yet had
has
any...
been expelled or suspended because of the encampment?
Those processes are underway. So
But
none have been expelled.
Nobody has been suspended or expelled despite having graphics like this. They've just been asked to take them down.
Actions are underway, but it does take some time to follow due process so that whatever conclusions are reached and whatever sanctions are recommended have indeed proper purchase. So that is our goal.
Okay, thank you. Just for the interest of members as well as witnesses, I will go for 6 minutes to Mr. Housefather, 6 minutes per Monsieur Fortin. We will then break. We have resources to come back after the vote, but I will need both the witnesses as well as members to agree to that, and we can come back till 5 minutes before 1:50, 1:55. So I will now go 6 minutes, Mr. Housefather.
Thank you very much.
About it, and I'll need a response.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you very much for being here today. I cannot believe that in my lifetime we were having university presidents testifying before the parliamentary committee about anti-Semitism on campus. And President Carr, respectfully, I don't believe empathy should be the #1 goal. It should be protecting our kids and keeping our campuses safe of intimidation and harassment. That should be the #1 goal here. So I have some yes and no questions. I'd just like to ask everybody to say yes or no. If you can't answer yes or no, say I can't answer, but no more than that, or I'll reclaim my time. I'm going to start with President Saini, then President Gertler, then President Bacon, then President Carr. Do you acknowledge anti-Semitism is a significant problem on your campus, President Saini?
Yes.
President Gertler?
Yes.
President Bacon?
Everywhere.
President Carr? Yes. Do you believe that DEI programs, all DEI programs on your campus must include the Jewish community, must include Jews? President Saini?
Yes.
President Gertler?
Yes.
President Bacon?
Indeed, yes.
President Carr? Yes. Do you support the IRA definition of anti-Semitism? It's the definition of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance that's been adopted by the Government of Canada, the Government of Ontario, the Government of Quebec, governments of a number of provinces. And will you support its application on your campus when the handbook from Ms. Lyons comes out on implementation of IRA? President Saini?
If this comes forward, I will have my support for starting the process.
Thank you, President Saini. President Gertler?
Our working group looked at this issue and concluded that the IHRA definition was problematic for application in the
So your answer is no, then? Your answer is no.
My answer is that the individual, Kenneth Stern, who authored the definition, was very clear in noting that it is not appropriate for use in a university environment. So the answer is no.
The answer is no. So I was just asking for an answer, yes or no, or I can't answer. President Bacon?
My understanding is this is one of the tools we consider when going forward on any cases of anti-Semitism.
You'll consider it going forward. President Carr?
Yes, we'll consider it going forward. In fact, my team has already had a meeting with Ms. Lyons' team.
Thank you. In 2016, the Canadian House of Commons adopted a motion by 229 to 51 rejecting the BDS movement, which promotes the demonization and delegitimization of the State of Israel, and called on the government to condemn any and all attempts by Canadian organizations, groups, and individuals to promote BDS. Does your administration oppose BDS on your campus? President Saini?
I personally find many of the demands of this movement offensive, and should the matter come up again in front of our governing bodies, we will consider it.
Thank you. Consider saying no or consider it?
We will, because this is subject to our governance processes, just like the Parliament has its governance processes. And as President, it's my role to uphold our processes.
I understand, but as personally, are you against BDS?
As I said, I find it very offensive.
Thank you very much. President Gertler, personally, are you against BDS?
We've rejected it consistently across the university and for many, many years, as we have all academic boycotts.
Thank you very much. President Bacon?
Yes, UBC has long rejected.
So the motion before your Senate, the UBC administration will come out against it?
Yes.
Thank you. Excellent. President Carr?
Yes, the university's position since 2014 has been in opposition to BDS.
Thank you very much. When you have chants at these encampments that say, go back to Poland, say it loud, say it clear, we don't want no Zionists here, Antifada revolution, from the river to the sea, do you consider these chants to be hateful and anti-Semitic, President Saini?
The way I hear them used right now on our campuses, including at McGill, I find it anti-Semitic.
Thank you, President Saini. Thank you for clarifying in your statements that you do. President Gertler?
In the current context, they are certainly experienced as anti-Semitic, and that's for that reason that we have reported certain incidents to Toronto Police Services. But I would say that...
Thanks. I'm sorry, I have to reclaim my time because I just have two more to answer. President Bacon? President Bacon?
No worries. They are unfortunate, awful, and can be considered anti-Semitic.
Thank you so much. President Carr?
Yes, they're reprehensible and intimidating when chanted on campuses.
Thank you very much. President Carr, I want to ask you a question about your Strive task force that you referred to in your testimony. One of the three co-chairs that you appointed to this task force has a long record of supporting BDS and opposing IRA, which leaves a lack of confidence amongst many of your Jewish students in the process. Why did you appoint this person, and will you consider removing them as a co-chair?
So, Mr. Housefather, one of the things that I find very unfortunate in terms of the public discussion that has happened since October is there's been a very intense personalization of issues. And we've seen that in terms of individual students being targeted, individual faculty members being targeted, et cetera. And I think that's extremely unfortunate.
And I'm concerned is on a confidence question, sir. You have the task force that's tackling anti-Semitism.
30 seconds.
You've acknowledged that you're against BDS. You've acknowledged that you're considering IRA. You've had one of three co-chairs of the task force that rejects what you just said. How do the Jewish students feel comfortable then? And also let me ask you, because I only have a second left, what have you done about Concordia SPHR, a group on campus on October 11th held Israel responsible for the events of October the 7th and was a co-signer to a statement on social media where it gave full-throated support to Palestinian terrorism, writing, we emphasize that a population living under siege and occupation has no option but to resist. McGill removed McGill's name on this organization. What has Concordia done?
And I have no choice but to uphold that because we're getting close. If I'm allowed to continue with Mr. Fortin, 6 minutes, but 6 minutes, c'est tout, Monsieur Fortin.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to our four guests. What's happening on university campuses is extremely worrying, and I think you're all going through similar situations from coast to coast and in Quebec also. We've already heard you speak about the issue here, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on how you can allow freedom of expression without having things get out of hand and go overboard. I have always felt that universities are a wonderful place for having the most difficult discussions between students and with faculty, and I'm always a little troubled when there's talk of limiting freedom of expression, specifically in universities. However, hate speech is unacceptable, and so there is a proposal in C-63 for defining what constitutes hate speech. There's also the religious exception in the criminal code that allows hate speech if it is based on a religious text. I'm talking about hate speech or anti-Semitic speech. So that's all part of the picture. Maybe I will start with the order on the agenda. Mr. Carr, President Carr, how do you propose to combat hate speech without limiting freedom of expression? Thank you for the question. I won't talk about the encampment specifically, but maybe I can answer your question with some figures. What happened on our campus on November 8th that I already referred to, 70 events, academic events led by students who were either pro-Palestinian or pro-Israel. I think this shows all of the effort that our entire community made to ensure that there is still the possibility of discussing issues in a respectful and civil way. At the same time, we canceled or rejected 5 university events because we determined that they posed a risk for security of our community and for the delivery of our academic mission. Sorry for being impolite, Mr. President Carr, but can you tell us what those 5 events were that you decided to reject or cancel? There were 4 pro-Palestinian events and 1 pro-Israel event. And these were external guests who had been invited to the university to give speeches. Thank you. In your opinion, people who are not clients of the university, students or faculty, should they be allowed to protest on university campuses, or should it only be people who have a reason to be there, students or faculty? Well, as I said at the beginning, Concordia is really in central Montreal. There's a metro station that opens up into 3 of our buildings, and in the past our university has always been open to the public. So now we're in a situation where we want to always make sure that public institutions such as ours are open for citizens of Quebec and Canada. But at the same time, we've seen, especially after October 8th, there's a pressure from people who are not affiliated with the university. And should those people not be allowed to access university campuses? It's very difficult to answer that. We are a university. We're not security guards. At Concordia, for example, there are 30,000 people on campus every single day. I have 12 security agents who work on prevention on our downtown campus. In normal times, that's fine. As my colleague said, the vast majority of our staff, faculty, and students are respectful. So there's also this issue of means, how universities can react to this, and also to maintain freedom of expression, academic freedom, which are enshrined in law in Quebec. It's not an easy balance to strike. You're absolutely right. I don't know how long I have left. That's all. Your time is up. Thank you very much, Mr. Fortin.
Pending the vote, we still have minutes left, so we will come back. So suspended. Meeting called back to order. This is what I propose to do. It's 1:26 p.m. We will complete the first round with Mr. Garrison of 6 minutes. I will go to the second round of 5, 5, 2.5, 2.5, and conclude for the afternoon. So thank you very much for bearing with us, and we will continue with 6 minutes for Mr. Garrison where we left off.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry to be a bit breathless. It's not that far to the chamber. I thank the witnesses for being here today, but I have to say that I find it a bit distressing that your testimony doesn't seem to match the reality that I hear from students on campus. And not just at your institutions, but from institutions in my own riding and across the country. And one of the problems that I see is that while it's great to say anti-Semitism is unacceptable, and great to say Jews should be included in diversity, I don't actually see that in the policies that I've been able to access. So I'm going to start with Professor Girdler from U of T. Where in your anti-harassment policies or anywhere else in your policies does it say that anti-Semitism, explicitly say anti-Semitism is not acceptable on campus?
Madam Chair, I want to thank the member for his question. So I can answer in a couple of ways. First of all, our Code of Student Conduct does indeed note that vexatious conduct that is directed at one or more specific individuals is potentially evidence of discriminatory conduct or harassment. And it names race, ancestry, ethnic origin, color, religion, these kinds of traits, which are indeed straight out of the Ontario Human Rights Code. So it takes that approach rather than naming individual faiths, religions, or cultures. So it's meant to be all-inclusive. But another way of answering the member's question would be to note that directly as a result of the work of our anti-Semitism working group, we have reviewed and overhauled our EDI process to make sure that our equity policies explicitly recognize anti-Semitism as a form of discrimination, harassment, or hate. And we have trained all of our equity officers expressly to address these issues. I could say more, but I think that is indeed directly answering the member's question.
Thank you for that answer. I guess as a gay man of a certain age who used to be told that there was no need to list LGBT community and things because discrimination was illegal, I found things improved once there was an explicit reference. And so I guess what I would encourage the U of T to do is to make more explicit statements rather than to simply say all forms of discrimination are prohibited, because the one where we have an epidemic of discrimination going on right now is anti-Semitism, given the connection.
We have indeed made such statements and will continue to do so if and as necessary.
And in terms of equity programs on campus, are Jews explicitly included as groups within diversity and equity?
Yes.
So there's specific reference, not just a general reference?
Yes. No, it's specific. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. And now to Professor Saini from McGill. Same kind of questions. Where, if at all, in McGill's policies does it specifically say that anti-Semitism is not acceptable as a form of harassment or discrimination on campus?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'll answer through you the member's question. We apply our student code with respect to discrimination, hate, bullying, harassment, or any other offensive behavior that is targeted at specific groups based on their race, religion, background, circumstance, et cetera, et cetera. So it's much like how my colleague at University of Toronto described. Our policies fully cover all forms of hate against all communities. Lately, as the anti-Semitism has become much more obvious and explicit in our society, including on our campuses, we have been calling it out specifically. And we will certainly look at going forward whether any changes are needed, where we need to explicitly enshrine any particular groups within our EDI policies or discrimination policies.
And in terms of policies on equity, diversity, and inclusion, are Jews specifically included in those policies as they exist right now?
Okay, I believe they are, but I will have to verify it one more time to make sure that that my personal understanding of it is correct, and I can get back to the committee.
And the focus has always been on students here, but we know that many faculty have been engaged in the encampments and in other anti-Semitic activities on campus. And so just because I have you right now, Professor Sani, are there policies which would apply to faculty which are explicit in banning anti-Semitism or not?
Madam Chair, answering through you, the answer is yes, that if any faculty are found to be violating any of our policies with regard to hate and discrimination and including anti-Semitism, that our policies are adequate to account for that, and the proceedings will be taken against those individuals.
Thank you. I'll turn to those in the room. Dr. Bacon, my alma mater at UBC. The same kind of question. Are things actually made explicit when it comes to anti-Semitism and harassment and discrimination policies?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Indeed, our discrimination policy outlines the mechanisms to address any discrimination that is protected under the Human Rights Code, very much including race, religion, and place of origin. And the policy is interpreted in a manner consistent with how BC's courts and the Human Rights Tribunal interpret.
I'm sorry, time's up for this one. And now I will go to the second round, deuxième tour. 5 minutes, please, to MP Lansman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to continue with Mr. President Carr. Are you aware of the demand letter sent by Neil Oberman to the university speaking about hatred on campus?
Yes, I am.
So we've established that you're aware that anti-Semitism is a problem on Concordia's campus, and that there has been incidents of violence. You called them a black eye for Concordia. I would call it absolutely abhorrent and unacceptable, and an abdication of responsibility to keep Jewish students safe. But I think that's just a disagreement. You're aware that there are groups on campus that promote hatred against Jews?
Which groups are you referring to?
Well, I can name one, SPHR.
SPHR is a group on campus. It's important to understand that under the Quebec law, student associations act independently of the university.
So there's no responsibility from the university president if any of those groups are causing chaos on campus, which you referred to in your opening statements as a blemish on Concordia. There's no responsibility for a university president or the administration on any of that?
I did not say that, and in fact, what I said in my opening statement is that we've worked very hard to keep channels of communication open with all student groups, including with SPHR. Our goal has been to work to prevent episodes from happening on campus and work to the extent possible to de-escalate episodes.
Let me ask you about the November 8th incident that you talked about in your opening statement. There's a student there. He's in his 8th year of his undergrad. Has that student been expelled or suspended based on, frankly, being arrested twice since October 7th?
I'm not going to comment on the case of any individual student, and I'm not going to comment on any cases that are currently under investigation as per our process.
So have there been any students that have been expelled or suspended? The reason I am asking is because I think there's a lot of people watching who, frankly, are looking at this testimony, which is the exact opposite of what students and faculty have told this committee about their experience, and are watching university presidents abdicate their responsibility for keeping Jewish students safe on campus.
So this is the Justice Committee. The Justice Committee also, I think, understands the importance of institutions abiding by their practices. That is what we are doing in our application of our Code of Conduct on behavioral cases and processes which have been launched following complaints that are evidence found.
I'm very happy that you explained to me what the Justice Committee is, but I have asked you a question, and the question is, has anybody been suspended or expelled for their conduct on your university campuses, which has put Jewish students and students that are part of Jewish student groups and allies of those groups in danger? Just a yes or no.
At this point, no one has been suspended because processes are ongoing.
So we hear from presidents. We've now heard from U of T. We've now heard from Concordia that processes are ongoing, but nobody has had any consequences for any of these actions. This has been going on for 7 months on campus. We've had students here tell us stories about not feeling safe on going to school, on going to libraries, on going to classes. There are faculty members on university campuses across this country who have not been let in on various parts of their campuses. And yet nobody, not a single person, has been expelled or suspended for any of the conduct.
Back to the events of the 8th of November, 3 individuals were banned from our campus as a result of that activity.
But the students of your university who have participated in this, again, not suspended. The same case at U of T. I find that the testimony here today that says that we're working on it and everything is going to be fine is frankly divorced from reality. And it's the reality of students actually sitting behind you in this room who have come to this committee and testified about being afraid of going onto your campuses. So I'll ask you one more time. The parents that are watching, that are going to decide whether their children will attend places like Concordia, places like U of T, what do you say to them about whether their kids will feel safe on campus if there is no deterrence and there's no consequences for those who have acted in contravention of that?
Well, I would go back to something I said earlier, which is that despite the events of the 8th of November, we at Concordia have had 70 events on campus with respect to the Middle East, the majority of which were organized by students.
Thank you very much, President Kerr. Appreciate that. We will now go to MP de Brussen for 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'd like to begin a bit where I had my conversation with Universities Canada, which is that anti-Semitism at universities isn't a new thing. In fact, there's a long history. And I appreciate that President Gertler made specific reference to the quota system that had applied to Jewish prospective students. I'm wondering if we can go around to each of the presidents to let me know if your university did have a formal or informal quota system for Jewish students, starting with McGill.
Madam Chair, responding through you, yes, I am aware that McGill had a quota system until, I believe, 1960s. And it is a part of our history that we are absolutely not proud of, and it is a part of Canadian history that I think as Canadians, we should all be very concerned about. But going forward, we have been working since the 1960s to make McGill a much more inclusive place, and that is a work in progress, and we continue to do that.
I apologize, President Sainer. I just wanted to jump in because the question that I had was about the quotas for Concordia.
Yes, so one of Concordia's founding institutions, Sir George Williams University, was one of the first universities in Quebec to admit Jewish students without any quota. That was going on in the 1950s and 1960s when quotas existed elsewhere. We are also a university which has an academic program in Canadian Jewish Studies, which is one of the oldest in the country. And today we also are, I think, one of the very few universities in the country which is an institute for Israeli studies.
Just to be clear, though, am I misunderstanding things to believe that Concordia also had an informal quota or a formal quota for Jewish?
No, there was no quota.
No quota at Concordia. All right. And UBC?
Thank you for the question. I'm still new to UBC, but when it was raised in the previous session, I endeavored to find out the answer, and my understanding is there was no such thing at UBC. But I will do a more profound research, and I will get back to you if that's not the case.
Thank you. We've been talking a lot about the policies of equity and does it include anti-Semitism for the universities here who have acknowledged that they had quota systems? Is that included in part of the learning for staff, students, and other people who are participating in the DEI? I'll start with McGill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Answering through you, yes, it is part of our EDI policies to ensure that all disadvantaged groups who have faced disadvantage or exclusion in the past
I'm just
have.
talking about Jewish students and anti-Semitism right now. I'm just asking about the quotas for Jewish students.
Yes, well, I've answered the question regarding quota already. With regard going forward, now our EDI policies
I'm sorry, it's
are
just
totally
I'm really
inclusive.
short on time, President Saini. I just wanted to know if there's a specific reference in the DEI content about the quotas on Jewish students. That's what I'm asking.
I cannot answer that if there is actually a specific reference to the past quotas, but I can answer that there is no such provision at this point that there is actually a quota for any given community.
Okay, and President Gertler, can I ask you the same question?
Yeah, the answer is yes. I mentioned that the incident from the history was in the Temerity Faculty of Medicine, and their training now includes a module exactly on this very issue.
Thanks. In going to that, can I ask you to please table with the committee Dr. Cooper's study about anti-Semitism in the medical school prior to the most recent October 7th events? I have less than a minute, but I'm passing it over to Mr. Mendicino.
Thanks very much. I want to highlight a concern around foreign funding and foreign influence, and indeed foreign interference in the post-secondary sector. A number of groups have written me and my colleagues to express their concerns around this, and I'm wondering if I can get a commitment from all of the universities who are represented in today's hearing to raise the bar when it comes to transparency around private funding of your institutions, to ensure that that funding is in alignment with Canadian values, including the values that have been espoused today, academic freedom, and certainly not hate and anti-Semitism. I'll start with those on the line. Yes or no?
So time is up, but I think you've heard Mr. Mendicino's question, and
My answer is yes.
okay. Stop reset.
Mine is as well.
Yes.
MP Fortin, la parole est à vous pour 2 minutes.
You have the floor for 2.5 minutes. Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question for Dr. Saini, McGill. Obviously, we're talking about anti-Semitism. That's the theme of our study at our committee, but there are other forms of hate. I'd like to know if at McGill there's also racism, Islamophobia, homophobia, other forms of hate that exist right now on McGill campuses. Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, in 2022, we implemented an Islamophobia and anti-Semitism initiative, which included wide consultations with our communities, specifically with the Muslim and Jewish communities, and based on that, we developed several recommendations that have already been implemented. So, of course, since if we undertook this study, it's because we recognize that there is also Islamophobia in our community, as well as anti-Semitism. Thank you. Forgive me for interrupting. I only have about a minute left. In your opinion, do you think all forms of hate should be treated the same way, or should we react differently depending on the type of hate we're talking about? Well, we look at each type of hate on a case-by-case basis, but of course, all types of hate and harassment are included in our policies. Thank you. Professor Carr from Concordia, the same question. Are there other forms of hate, and should we treat all of these forms of hate the same way? Unfortunately, the forms of hate that exist in wider society are also present on our campus. As I said earlier, we have a working group that has been studying different forms of hate, and I'm waiting for their recommendations on anti-Semitism and Islamophobia to better understand their recommendations for the future. Thank you.
2.5 minutes to Mr. Garrison, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'm going to address one other thing that's been bothering me in this session, and that is this emphasis on due process. And so my question I'm going to direct to Dr. Carr to start with. When you say that there are processes underway, I have a certain amount of sympathy with that. But do your processes not require that those who are accused of anti-Semitic or harassment or other offenses cease the behavior while those processes are taking place? So in other words, if we were talking in a public context, if someone continued the behavior, that wouldn't be acceptable. They may not be found guilty of an offense yet, but they have to cease the behavior while the process is going on. Is there no way in any of your processes to require ceasing the anti-Semitic, hateful, and harassment behavior?
So that is part of our code, indeed. That individuals who are for whom we have evidence-based complaints, the processes are launched. And clearly, if the behavior continues or manifested in some further way, then an actionable response needs to happen.
An actionable response, what does that actually mean in the real world?
Well, as I said, we are very committed to upholding our process, and if someone is continually behaving in a way that is not acceptable according to our codes, we apply our codes.
And I would ask the same question, I know we're going to run out of time here, to Professor Gertler at the U of T. Do the processes not require people to cease abusive, harassing behavior while those processes take place?
They absolutely do.
And so how are these behaviors continuing if you say at the same time the processes are underway?
Well, I can't comment on individual cases, but I can tell you that where individuals have demonstrated repeated behavior that we believe to be in violation of our code, we follow up directly with them, and we have done so.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That concludes my questions.
Thank you very much to the witnesses. Thank you for coming. Members, thank you for all bearing with us through our processes here. To the witnesses, if there's anything that you believe you needed to bring out that you didn't have the time to do so, please send us something in. Witnesses, thank you very much, and look forward to seeing you in the house next door in 10 minutes. Thank you very much. That concludes our meeting for today.